Hey, what's going on, y'all? Back with another one, back with another one. Okay, let's revisit denialism, right? This is part three. This is the final part. That's it. The first two parts is pretty simple. I talked about it, and let me get a clip, let y'all hear it, and then the seven examples. We talked about the apathy. We talked about basically, basically, who's this? This is 50 Vixen. Oh, okay, I'm just looking at battle rap. Excuse me, we gotta stay on topic. Let's see what up here. I gotta look at this YouTube shit. I don't want no copyright or all that. Yeah, that's part one, and it's part two. Okay, part one is like that. Okay, okay, I got that in the background. All right. Okay, I'll be right back, y'all. Yeah, I had to knock that video in the background because I was looking at a live stream. But that happens. That happens. I had to do that. I had to do that. I ain't trying to get copyright on this shit because this shit go crazy. Okay, so we got the first nihilism. We talked about cynicism and apathy, and then we talked about pessimism, the pessimistic of it, the three. So part one is 22 and it's long, and we're just gonna get into it. Let me share the screen, and we're gonna keep up with what, as you can see here, you have this stuff right here. I'm gonna pick up the screen for a minute. I'm gonna take myself out of it. Here we go. I'm going to look at my channel right here. We're just going to get into the parts. So, part one, we're basically talking about the history of nihilism, the ideologies, and things like that. And sometimes we talked about the basics, right? If y'all haven't watched this, watch this soon, okay? I did my thing on that. And this is part two, and I'll explain this later. We're going to break this down in parts. We'll break down a little bit in parts. So, let's get this going and take this off. Hey, what's going on, y'all? Hey, hey, what's going on, y'all? Back with another one, back with another one. Let's talk about nihilism for a minute. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Yeah, let's talk about it. I try to get it on here. They said what nihilism is not in order. We're going to talk about it, and then we're going to talk about what it is. And we got the definition, of course, if y'all want to know. It says total rejection of establishment, institutions. And they said number two, anarchy, terrorism, or other revolutionary activity. Three, total absolute destructiveness, especially toward the world at large and including oneself. That's part of it. That's the extreme side of it. Philosophy, extreme form of skepticism, denial of all real existence, of the possibility of an objective basis for truth. That's the fourth. That's the philosophy aspect of it. That's the fourth one. And the fifth one, sometimes initial capital letter principle of the Russian revolutionary group, active in latter of the 19th century, holding that the existing social and political institutions must be destroyed in order to clear the way for a new state of society, and imploding, employing extreme measures and including terrorism and assassination. hmm That's the fifth thing. And the sixth thing, annihilation of self or individual consciousness, especially as an aspect of the mystical experience. So that's the basically the noun of nihilism, right? So that's I'm giving you the basic. That's in the dictionary.com. So if you want to look, that's where I got that from. And I try to find it on here. I try to find it on one of my folders. Oh man, I try to political philosophy. Yeah, 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 yeah. We're gonna get that real quick. We're gonna get that real quick. Yeah. Dog Josie bark in the background. She act that damn fool. Don't mind that. I don't mind that. Okay. Okay. Marxism. Okay, I try to find it. Philosophy. Branched by doctrine. Branched by doctrine, Smile today. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to find some. I'm trying to find it on the basic philosophies. Shit. Oh, okay. It can be a hassle sometimes, but y'all get the gist. Western philosophies, movement social by individual philosophers. Shit. Yeah, Friedrich Nietzsche, the German, existentialism and nihilism. Yeah, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. What I just read was the definitions, but now we're gonna get into the philosophy. But we're gonna show you. Hold on for a minute. I'm gonna share my screen for a minute. Okay, we're gonna get this right here real quick. This is the big talk. So I'm gonna share this screen. It said what nihilism is not. But we're gonna read I just read y'all the definitions. I read y'all everything, and now we're gonna talk about what we're gonna read and so many things to do is what we're going to deal with the definition. But now we get into the philosophy and the introduction. Like I did this before on several streams, and yes, it'll be in the nihilist playlist. By the way, I believe it will be. We'll see because I think I have a playlist of these things. I want to see what I'm talking about. I wonder if I have a playlist. Oh God. Let's see. Do I have it? I'm trying to see if I have it. If I don't, that's fine. I don't think that's. I don't think I have it. No. We'll just say the philosophy. We'll say that. Okay. It's a philosophical position which argues that beings, especially past and current human existence, it is without objective meaning, purpose, comprehensible truth, or essential value. It asserts that there is no responsibility for proof or the existence of the higher ruler or creator, the existence of a higher ruler or creator, that a true morality does not exist. That's the introduction of nihilism. That's what this believes. The objective secular ethics are impossible. Therefore, life has, in sense, no truth, no action is objectively preferable to any other. The term nihilism was first popularized by a novelist, Ivan Turgevin, Turgevin, you know. I'll say Ivan T. I'll say it like that. 1818 to 1883. He was the first, and it was a novelist. That's what they said. Art movements such as Dada and Futurism, and philosophical movements like existentialism, postmodernism, post-structuralism, and deconstructionism have all identified by the commentators as nihilistic. At various times, in various contexts, nihilism differs from skepticism in that skepticism does not reject claims to the truth outright. It only rejects these claims if there is insignificant empirical evidence to support them. That's what it rejects. Okay. That's what it says in nihilism. But niggas want to claim they black pill nihilism, which they're not. Nihilism is mostly associated with the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, although he never actually advocated nihilism as a practical mode of living and was typically quite critical of it. He was typically quite critical. Yeah, most of them are. Not all nihilists are the same. They're some of them are critical of it. He was, however, one of the first philosophers to study nihilism extensively. Nietzsche's criticism of nihilism was mainly on the grounds that it it can become a false belief. Led individuals to discard any hope of meaning in the world, thus in it invent as some uh compensatory compensatory of alternative measures of significance. But he also asserts that nihilism is a result of valuing higher and divine or metaphysical things such as power. They will say God on there, most high power God, right? Power, right? That's what it means. That do not in turn value based on human or earthly things, and that any form of idealism, after being rejected by the idealist, leads to nihilism. According to Nietzsche, it's only once nihilism has overcome that a culture can have a true foundation upon which to thrive. Says Friedrich Nietzsche, the German. It's nihilism. That's his version of nihilism. Everybody's got different versions. Every philosopher is different. They got so many. Similar to Derrida, who deconstructionism movement is commonly labeled nihilistic, did not himself make the claims often attributed to him. And in fact, deconstructionism can be not as a denial of truth, but as a denial of our ability to know truth. It makes a epistemological claim as an opposed to nihilism's ontological or metaphysical claim. That's what they will say, right? Nihilism is one of the few branches of philosophy that allows for the possibility of absolute nothingness by making three apparent plausible assumptions, but that there are infinite number of objects in the world, that each of these objects are contingent, and that although they exist, they might not have existed, but that the objects are independent. The non existent one thing does not necessitate the existence of anything else. Then the subtraction argument runs that each contingent object can be subtracted from the world one by one until absolutely nothing is left. However, it is not clear that the independence in assumption is justifiable in their practice, whether it be not clear that the independence assumption is justifiable in the practice, whether it be is an imaginative thought of an experiment or in hand scientific or world of particle physics. But subtracting an object from a particular scenario actually does have repercussions, however, small for the world as a whole, but rather nothingness appears to be a limited or asymptote that can be approached but never quite reached. That's what they're saying about the introduction of nihilism and then different peoples and terms and stuff. Okay, then you got the types of nihilism. You got metaphysical nihilism by block theory. This theory is there are no objects and objects does not exist, and therefore empirical reality is illusions, or morally commonly the theory that there might have been no objects at all. So it's like, Immanuel Kant is another one, and then they talk about promenades and Buddha and Hinduism, because they're some of those idolatrous religions can be nihilistic too. Nihilism, I'm neutral on it. I think it's an interesting philosophy. It's always have been, but I'm not the extreme nihilist. No, I can be at times on my lower self if I really want to go extreme. We already know what that is. If I don't believe in idolatry, I go there. Partially nihilism, but some philosophers argue that only objects of certain kind have parts. One such as in organicism, and then the view of living beings are composites and objects and the parts. Yeah, you got moral nihilism, and then I talked about happy nihilism once. That's not up here too. But Niccolo Machiavelli deals with the moral nihilism. That you got a bunch of that around. You got the partial on that. Okay, that's explaining it from a philosophy standpoint. Now we're going to read this part. It says what nihilism is not. In order to preserve nihilism as a meaningful concept, it's necessary to distinguish it from pessimism, cynicism, and apathy. There's three parts. Let's read that again. In order to preserve nihilism as a meaningful concept, it is necessary to distinguish it from pessimism, cynicism, and apathy. Right? Let's see how much time we got on the clock. Oh, we making good time on the clock. Okay, okay, we good. I ain't got that much to read. We're just gonna explain it. Nihilism is not unlike the time, according to Augustine, or porn, according to the U.S. Supreme Court, is one of those concepts that we are all pretty sure that we know the meaning of unless someone asks to define it. Nihil means nothing, ism means ideology. Yet when we try to combine these terms, the combination seems to immediately refute itself, as the idea that nihilism is the ideology of nothing appears to be nonsensical. But to say that this means that someone believes in nothing, it is not really much more helpful, as believing in something suggests as there is something to be believed in. There's something to be believed in. But if that is something, it is nothing, then there is not something to be believed in which his case is believing in nothing is again a self-refuting idea. It's a self-refuting idea. That's what they're saying about it. Okay. And this is from the reader multipress.edu. That's where I got this from. That's the source I got it from. That's my source. It is easy, therefore, to fall into the trap of thinking of everything is nihilism, which of course leads to thinking nothing is nihilism. Thus, in order to preserve nihilism as a meaningful concept, it is necessary to distinguish it from concepts that are often associated with it, but are very nonetheless different. Concepts such as pessimism, cynicism. I'm more of a cynic, by the way. That's my weakness right there. Pessimism. I dealt with that as a young age when it was bleak to me, and I grew out of that. I'm more of a cynic in other areas how the world works. And apathy, that's another good one too, and there's some truth to that. And apathy, nihilism versus pessimism. If optimism is hopefulness, then pessimism is hopelessness. To be a pessimist to say, what is the point? Pessimism is often like to a glass is half empty way of seeing the world, which is true, half empty. That's true. But since it's only half empty, this scenario might still be still too hopeful for a pessimist. A better scenario might be that if a pessimist fell in a well, someone offered to rescue him, he'll likely respond, why bother in the well or out of the well? We're all going to die anyway. In other words, pessimism is a dark, depressing, but it's not nihilism. See? You see? They said, in other words, pessimism is dark, depressing, but it's not nihilism. Interesting take right here with this research that I found. If pessimism fell in the well, like someone's like he said, we're going to die anyway. He said, why bother? And he likely responds, someone offered him to rescue him. He'll likely respond, why bother? That's his answer, right? In the well, out of the well, we're all going to die anyway. I hear that concept all the time in movies, in person, and yeah. In fact, we might even go as far to say that pessimism is the opposite of nihilism. Like nihilism, pessimism could be seen as arising from despair, but the fact of our death, the frustration of our desires, the unintended and consequences of our actions, the tweets of our political leaders, any or all of these could lead us to either nihilism or pessimism. However, where these two roads diverge is over the question of whether we dwell we dwell on our despairs or hide it from it or hide from it. To be with the pessimist to know this that you are with a pessimist, but you can be with a nihilist and have no idea. But indeed, you could yourself be a nihilist and have no idea. There's some truth to that. Most people don't even know that. There's some truth to that. But not everybody's a nihilist, but it depends on if you have a nihilistic thinking, there's some truth to that. Nihilism is a huge study. I'm going to touch on this more. Yeah. Basically, I was saying right here, I was touching on it in the studies and things like that. And then we talked about pessimism and things like that. Y'all heard this part, and we're just going to cut it right here. But the rest, I know it plays out. I know y'all heard it, the ones that heard it, but the ones that haven't, y'all can just go check that out later. But, I'm signing off and I'm out. And it's about to go off. Okay. So basically, that's just the parts that you see. You know what I'm saying? But that's part one. Part two is very tricky. We're going to get into it. And yeah, it's a little longer, but, we'll see what's going on with it. Okay. We got time. I'll let y'all hear it. All right. Hey, what's going on, y'all? Back with another one. Back with another one. All right. We're doing nihilism. I think it's part two. I said this is the study. Yeah, revisiting the study of nihilism, part two. We talked about the pessimism part of it from the reader.multipress.mid.eu. Okay. So we're going to talk about cynicism and apathy. That's what we're going to talk about. So I'm going to share the screen, but you know how it is. I'm going to get this out of here. And let me share the screen for a minute. I'm just going to get this out of the way. All right. Get my ass up out of there. We're going to talk about this today, and then we're going to have the extensive of nihilism, of course, and it's just like it says in the ideology of the last week's recording. But you know how it is. You know how it is. But and when we talk about cynicism, we're going to break this down too to back it up. Our further point in ancient Greek and then nihilistic lifestyle. We're going to back this up as well as we read. Okay. Nihilism versus cynicism. Okay. And it says the same thing it says. Okay. In ancient Greece, a cynic was someone who lived like a dog. The Greek uh, kinkos means dog like. Yeah. Ninkos, or I mean, excuse me, Ninkos means dog like. That's what they said in the Greek. It means dog like. That's what a cynic means. Or to be more precise, was someone who lived by the cynic philosophy of staying true to the nature rather than what that the person saw a soul artifice. A total cynic is similarly down society and sees it as its fate. It's an interesting perspective. Most people are there ain't a lot of people cynics in the world. Most of them just buy into the fake stuff. But I'm one of them. Uh, but not because of the cynic sees society as unnatural, but it's because the cynic sees the people who make up the society as fake. That's very true. To be a cynical to assume that the worst of people, but to think of that the morality is mere pretense. And to suppose that even when people seem to be helping others, they are really only trying to help themselves, believing in only self-interest. But the cynic appears to others to believe in nothing. Consequently, cynics can appear to be a nihilism, but it's not denialism. A cynic can enjoy life, but in particular, a cynic can take a pleasure in mocking those who claim that altruism exists or that politicians are self-sacrificing public servants, and especially finds laughable the idea that we should try to see the good in people. Cynicism, like pessimism, is also about negativity. However, whereas pessimism is about despair, but the feeling that the life is pointless and in fact the face of death. But cynicism is instead of much more about disdain than despair. But a cynic wouldn't say that the life is pointless, but would just to say that what people claim that life is pointless. A cynic can even enjoy life. In particular, a cynic can take pleasure in mocking those who claim the altruism exists or that politicians and self-sacrificing public servants, yeah, like it says above, and it finds laughable the idea that we should try to see the good in people. Pessimists are not nihilists because pessimists embrace rather than evade despair. Cynics are not nihilists because cynics embrace rather than evade mendacity. But a key part of evading despair is the willing to believe that people can be good, that the goodness is rewarded. But that is such as the rewards can exist even if we do not experience them. But to a cynic, such as willingness to believe is the willingness to be naive, to be gullible, but to be manipulated. But the cynic mocks such beliefs not because the cynic claims to know that such beliefs are necessarily false, but because the cynic is aware of the dangers of representing by people who claim to know that such beliefs are necessarily true. Okay? And it's the skeptic approach. A skeptic waits for evidence before passing judgment. A cynic, however, does not trust evidence because the cynic does not trust that anyone is capable of proving evidence objectively. There's some truth to that. There's nothing wrong being a cynic, and there's nothing wrong being a skeptic. I'm going to sidebar here. A cynic is just straightforward. A skeptic is kind of like he's waiting on for the sky to fall. But there's nothing wrong with a skepticism. I mean, some people are skeptics. You got some on YouTube like that. There is a community like that on YouTube, but there's people like that. I understand how they think. Do I believe everything they say? No. I get their concepts, what their stance on. They believe in evidence. Most people are not skeptic. People are skeptical about a lot of things. Yeah, anybody can be a skeptic. Skeptic to me, I think it's more neutral. I think people are neutral on skeptic, but not everybody's a true cynic. They don't live by it. It's very rare nowadays. A skeptic waits for evidence before passing, and that's what I mean by skepticism. Not everybody's a true skeptic if they don't really live the lifestyle, because a lot of them are fake about it online. Because you got a lot of fake skeptics. A true skeptic is a guy like when it comes to politics, ain't that many because you got the so-called black community. They think they're skeptical about things. They're fraudulent. The ones that are, you can tell based off personality. Everybody else is just fake. I'm just keeping it real. Everybody wants to sell out and be famous. That's most people are bots. And this is why I mentioned about the slave bot thing. The slave bot thing is real. And I will do a stream, but I gotta write it down. I don't know, and I keep promising y'all I'm gonna do a vlog stream. I don't know if I'm gonna do it, whatever, but y'all gotta understand that I may not able to do it probably after Thursday drills. I might surprise y'all Friday. We'll see. We'll see. Because what I'm gonna say is I'm gonna write it down and have some thoughts about it. Because I feel the slave bot thing is a real thing. So again, you just gotta see what you got. But anyways, cynicism and being a cynic is very difficult to muster, and I think people get caught up on the word cynicism. There's a lot of cynics, but it's not part of nihilism. So I'm breaking it down to you. Then apathy, we talked about that. We talk about the cynics and things like that. Everybody has their own viewpoints of it. But what I'm trying to say is that's pretty much normal nowadays because the way they talk about relationships and stuff and basic needs and necessities, everybody's divided on a lot of issues. So I talk about range of topics. So when you talk about range of topics, it just becomes random. But normally I understand that this is the age everybody's in media. Media is really selling. It's the selling point of what people is going on right now. But you got to understand what I was doing here is explaining you the rest of the study of nihilism, then the EDU thing, and expected more of whatever the case may be. So, yeah, let me see something real quick. Do I gotta? Do I have? I'm trying to see something real quick. Do I have one on nihilism? I'm trying to figure communitarian. No, 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 no. I don't think so. Why? Yeah, I got it right here. And then we're gonna do some little homework. Pessimism, yeah, I talked about that. In part two, we talked about cynicism, and then we're gonna talk about apathy. I'll let y'all hear the rest of that. And then we'll get into the 7 examples and we're gonna end it off right there, okay? So it's pretty much, it's not much you can just muster. But it's basically what you see is what you get. So y'all excuse me 1 minute. I'll be right back. Sorry about that. I had to adjust the background noise. You know how it is. It's crazy. It does block it. I hope it don't leak through it. But I had to take care of that. But anyways, but it's just it's just a couple seconds I dropped off. But yeah, we're gonna get into it in the pathy and the rest. The rest of the way the video, and then I ain't gonna play it a whole lot. You'll get the gist. But then we'll get into the what you call it, the 7 examples of nihilism. We're gonna talk about that as well. Okay, y'all enjoy. As in judgment, a cynic is like it read on the brother. However, does not trust evidence because the cynic does not trust that anyone capable of providing evidence. Objectively, the cynic would prefer to remain dubious, but the risk of being duped that thus the cynic sees those who do take such risks as dupes. For this reason, the cynic is able to reveal the nihilism of others by challenging people to defend their lack of cynicism. There's some truth to that. Much like how the pessimist reveals the nihilism of others by challenging people to defend their lack of pessimism. Perhaps the best example of a relative, relatory abilities of a cynic is the argument between Darshamishkus and Socrates in the open book of the Plato's Republic. Darsmarchicius or something like that, I don't say Thras, is the first to introduce a mocking Socrates for questioning others about the definition of justice and the demands that he be paid in order to tell them that what justice truly is. Once appeased, Thras defines justice as a trick invented by the strongs in order to take advantage of the weak, as a way for the strong to seize power by manipulating society into believing that the obedience is justice. But Thras, I'll scroll down for a minute. I'll say Thras further argues that whenever possible, people do what is unjust, except when they are too afraid of being caught and punished, and thus Thras and concludes the injustice is better than justice. When Socrates attempts to refute this definition by likening political leaders to doctors, to those who have power but use it to help others, but rather than to help themselves, Thras does not accept the refutation like the others do, but instead refutes Socrates' refutation. Refutation. Yeah, refutation. Thrasis accuses Socrates of being naive and argues that Socrates is like a sheep who thinks the shepherd who protects and feeds the sheep does so because the shepherd is good, rather than realizing that the shepherd is fattening them for the slaughter, which is true. Fattening them for the sheep to the slaughter. I get that concept. You see that reference? They meant sending sheep to the slaughterhouse. That's that reference. He's fattening them up for the slaughter. So that means sending sheep to the slaughter. You know how people were saying it, they're going against the government? That statement right there lets you know that phrase. That's where it comes from. Socrates is never able to truly convince Tharsis that its definition of justice is wrong. But indeed, Tharsis' cynicism is so compelling that Socrates spends the rest of the Republic trying to prove that justice is better than the injustice by trying to refuse to impede the apparent success of unjust people by making metaphysical claims about the effects of the injustice on the soul. But Socrates is thus only able to counter cynicism in this visible world through the faith in the existence of the invisible world that argues is more real than the visible um, world others it is. But that's it cynicism for Socrates. Okay. Okay. Socrates and all this other stuff. Okay. Or Socrates revealed his nihilism. Yeah, he argues to reveal more than visible people to the world notice. Okay, I skipped over. Okay, counters is okay. Okay, my apologies, y'all. And more real than the visible world and others. Okay, in other words, Socrates' cynicism is forces Socrates to reveal his nihilism. Here we can see that nihilism is actually much more closely related to idealism than to cynicism. But cynics present himself or herself as a realist, but somehow who cares about the actions, not the intentions, who focus on what people do rather than other what people do to achieve. But who remembers the failed promises of the part, I mean, for the past order to avoid being swept up and not yet failed promises about the future. But the idealist, however, rejects the cynicism as hopelessly negative by focusing on the intentions on the hopes and on the end in the future. But the idealist negative by focusing on intentions on hopes of the future. Okay. Idealist is able to provide positive visions to oppose the negativity of the cynic. But in rejecting cynicism, does the idealist also reject reality? Nihilism is actually much more closely related to idealism to cynicism. Like it says, we and above, the idealist was we saw with the idealist what we saw with Socrates is not able to challenge the cynic's view of a reality and instead is forced to construct an alternative reality, a reality of ideas. These ideas may form of the coherent logical story about reality, but that is no way guarantees that the ideas are anything more than just a story. As an idealist, focus on more on the how reality ought to be, but the idealist becomes less, but less concerned with how reality is. The utopian views, the utopian's views of the idealist may be more compelling than the dystopian views of the cynic. But dystopian views are at least focused on the world, whether its utopian views are by definitions focused on the world that does not exist. It is for this reason that to use order, worldly idealism, to refuse the worldly cynic is no engage in nihilism. So that's cynicism right there. Then now let's talk about apathy. So since we're all in cynicism, let's read. You already know the introduction to cynicism. I talked about this before. It's ancient Greek, of course. It says addiction of responsibility, nihilistic lifestyle. Cynics believe that the world belongs equally to everyone, that the suffering is caused by false judgments of what is valuable, by the worthless customs and conventions which surround society. They also saw their job as an acting as the watchdog of humanity, the evangelize and to evangelize the home people. I mean, the hound people about the error of their ways, but they were particularly critical of any show of greed, which they view as a major cause of suffering. Many of their ideas were later absorbed into Stoicism. That's why a lot of Stoicism comes from because they were cynics. That's why Stoicism, cynicism, and nihilism has something in common. They're talking about the will of society and all that, kind of like an anarchist view. That's their philosophy too, because they read stuff like this as well. Although there was never an official Cynic doctrine to the fundamental principles, can be summarized as okay, summarized as But the goal of life is happiness, which is to live in agreement with nature. Happiness depends on being self sufficient and master of the mental altitude. Self sufficiency is achieved by living life of virtue. And then the next part, the road virtue is free on self from the influence of wealth, fame, power, etc., which has no value in nature. Suffering is called by false judgments of value, which cause negative emotions and vicious character. The term cynic derives from Greek nikos, meaning dog-like, like we just read on the other place. Yeah, the history of cynicism. Yeah, Pythagoras and his followers. Pythagoras and his followers. I talked about this in Socrates and aesthetics. You know the history and ethics, and then Stoicism or whatever. So yeah, that's basically it. I talk about cynicism on all the time on the basic philosophies. So that's it with nihilism and cynicism. So we knocked that off the boards, and this is basically just a summary of what we're doing. This is like part two, and y'all be my guests. I can do a part three or whatever. We'll talk about it in extensive, and we may do a part three. So we talk about the basics of what you call pessimism on part one. Y'all can watch that yourself, and I'll give you introduction of nihilism. And then in part two, it's basically the same thing. We're talking about cynicism and apathy. And now apathy is more important. Along with pessimism and cynicism, nihilism is also frequently associated with apathy. To be apathetic is to be without pathos, to be without feeling, to be without desire. While we are occasionally given choices that do not particularly sway us one way or another, do you want to be do you want to eat Italian or Chinese? That's an examples they give us, right? Such as disinterestedness is what the someone who is apathetic feels all the time. But to be apathetic is thus to be seen to a show how high apathetic high schooler Doria Morgendorffer and her friend Jane Lane have the following uh, um, conversations. Dora said the tragedy. Dora said tragedy, and everyone thinks of me. A popular guy died, and now I'm a popular because I'm the misery chick, but I'm not miserable. I'm just not like them. Jane, it really makes you think. Dora said, funny, thanks, funny, thanks a lot. And Jane said, no, that's why they want to talk to you. When they say you're always unhappy, Dara, what they mean is you think, Dara, I can tell because you don't smile. This guy died, and it makes me think that that hurts my little head and makes me stop smiling. So to tell me how you cope with thinking of all the time, but Dara, until I can get back to my get to my normal vegetable state. Okay, so why you have been avoiding me? Is what she said. Because I've been trying not to think. That's what she said. And Jane, that's the examples they use. Okay. And this is an example for apathy, or you apathetic. That's how they use. Okay. The apathetic individual can through like the pessimist and the cynic reveal the nihilism of others. Though unlike the pessimist and the cynic, the apathetic individual does this without actually trying to. Whether the pessimist and the cynic challenge others to explain their lack of either pessimism or cynicism. Apathetic individual is instead who is challenged by others to explain his or lack of pathos. In trying to get to the apathetic individual to care, the person who does care is forced to explain why he or she cares. An explanation which can be revealed how meaningful or meaningless is the reason that the person has for caring. The apathetic individual doesn't care. However, not caring is not the same thing as caring about nothing. The apathetic individual feels nothing, but the nihilist has feelings. It's just that what the nihilist has feelings for, it's itself nothing. And indeed, it's because the nihilist is able to have such strong feelings for something that is nothing, that the nihilist is not and cannot be apathetic. Nihilists can have sympathy, empathy, and anti-apathy. Anti Anti-apathy, but they cannot have apathy. So that's basically what it's saying. But not caring is not the same as caring the feelings. Okay. Here's Nietzsche, the guy that's one of the philosophers of nihilism. Nietzsche, the German guy Nietzsche, tried to demonstrate the feelings at work in nihilism in his argument against what he called the morality of pity. But the morality of pity holds that it's good to feel pity for those who are in need. And it is especially good to be moved by such pity to help those who are in need. But according to Nietzsche, what is often motivated that desire to help how we are able to see ourselves, but thanks to how we see ourselves in the need, but in particularly how we see ourselves as capable of helping, but as powerful enough to help. But the morality of pity is Nietzsche's not being able to help others, but by alleviating the oneself by reducing others to their neediness to a neediness that we do not have, and it reveals how much we do have by contrast. Pity Pity is nihilistic insofar as allows us to evade reality, such as by allowing us to feel that we are better than we are and that we are better than those in need. But consequently, we are able to avoid recognizing that we have perhaps only had better luck or haven't been more privileged. But the morality of pity drives us to feel pity, to feel good for feeling pity, but having such feelings and worse than feeling nothing. For we feel good when we feel pity, then we feel motivated. Only to help individuals we feel pity for rather than helping in the sympathetic injustice, but to create such as pitiful situations. But in the first place, whether the apathy may help us to avoid being blinded by our emotions, to see situations or injustice more clearly than pity. It is instead more likely to motivate us to perpetuate the injustice by perpetuating that the conditions that allow us to help the needy, but that allows us to see ourselves as good for helping those we see only as. This is not to suggest, however, that we should try to achieve apathy, but that we should try to as well in ourselves feeling nothing. But popular versions of Stoicism and Buddhism advocating for calmness, for detachment, for trying to not feel what we need, but to force oneself to become apathetic is nihilistic. As to do is to evade our feelings, but rather than confront them. But there's thus the important difference between being apathetic and becoming apathetic, between being indifferent, because that is how one responds to the world, and becoming indifferent because we want to be liberated from liberated from our feelings and attachments. Similarly, to become detachment now because of Stoicism or Buddhism, but because of the hipsterism, is still trying to detach oneself from the life, from reality. So pursuing irony can be just as nihilistic as pursuing apathy or nirvana. That's what they say. And then Nolan's, of course. Yeah, that's it. Um, what nihilism is not, by the Mid Press Reader .edu. So, we're gonna knock this off the screen. But that's it. That's it with nihilism part two. And we'll do a part three real soon. And I hope y'all enjoy the information I brought out. And yeah, this is my explanation of nihilism, a different angle of it. And it could be seen as negative too. So it's like a neutral zone to me. I'm gonna touch on this because a lot of people throw this ideology a lot more than people think. So people get caught up on nihilism, right? It's very nihilistic things, and we approach this three things. Part one, you already know about pessimism, right? Now, cynicism and apathy is the key parts that everybody loves to throw around, right? So that's my take on it, and I thought it explains a lot, and it's more deeper than that. It's different forms of nihilism I'm talking about, but you got these dudes claiming that, but they really not. They don't show it in these certain spaces, and then they try to proclaim they know about the philosophy, which they do not, like his so-called grand master himself. So with that, until next time, signing off. Shalom to the people of Yah Israel. If you get the knowledge, whatever. Shalom to you. Shalom to the Gentiles as well. As always, I'm signing off and I'm out. There you have it. There you have it. That was part one and two you just saw. Let me take this off real quick and back up what I'm saying. Yeah, I have it here. Yeah, on the mitt. So we're gonna get into the 7 examples, and it's basically what you're gonna see here. And we're not gonna go too long. We're just gonna skim through it and then just go here and just like, all right, okay. And like I said before, once again, you know, you gotta keep up with the philosophy and just keep it true. And there's 7 examples of nihilism. I just picked this out of nihilism. Okay, nihilism is the belief that has no meaning or value. That's what they say. You get the basics, and then the following are illustrated examples. They just say power is dead. They use the word God. We use the word Yah over here. God is dead. That means power is dead. Right? They ain't idolatry already. But we're gonna break this down. God remains dead, or power is dead. And that's what we mean is power. But we have killed him, they say. That's in a deluded minds. But we can console ourselves, the murderers of the murderers. Friedrich Nietzsche. He tried to say the gay science in 1882. So we already know that. We ain't gonna get into that. Frederick was concerned about the decline in religious beliefs. That's how they taught, you know, certain philosophers. And he said they accompanied to the modernism of his day. But the statement above is Nietzsche playing devil's advocate, challenging us to imagine moral nihilism replacing shared value systems. That's what you got today in some aspects. It's not what it is, and you'll see the term. They don't mention moral nihilism and all this other stuff, but nihilism is a extreme ideology. Yes, it's very extreme. It is a belief no action is good, but no action is bad. But this is called for indifference to that which people commonly find repugnant and wrong. Mhm. That's what they try to say. moral nihilism. That's what they preach, indifference. That's what people preaches, and I understand it. And the last man is predictions of Friedrich Nietzsche that the decline in a religious belief will produce a society obsessed with substance, comfort, convenience, entertainment, risk, avoidance. Nietzsche refers to this state to the last man views. This is a return in an animal state in existence whereby humankind has no greater purpose than its own comfort and safety. So that's the last man. Anami is a scene of the disconnection from others due to the lack of the shared experience, culture, norms, values. This term implies the state of suffering, disillusionment, and confusion as opposed to joyful and confident individualism. Skepticism is a belief that human knowledge is limited or completely faulty, but at the base is an argument that our senses could be some type of illusion or stimulation, such as that we can't even trust what we observe and measure. The skeptics can potentially feel that life has meaning and value, but that the beyond our abilities to fully understand these things. That skepticism they talked about. We talked about that earlier, and then you saw those two clips that I had recordings I did on those Wednesday recordings I did on part one, part two. But these wouldn't insert any certainty. Philosophical pessimism. We talked about pessimism and nihilism. Is a rejection of optimism and related concepts such as progress as skepticism, but this isn't necessarily nihilism, but often resembles it. For example, both would likely view a philanthropist's efforts to do good as likely to backfire or create unintended consequences. We just talked about this. And like I said in part two, same thing. Relativism. Relativism is the belief that is a universal truth. There are no universal truths. The view subjective experience as the only true reality with the attempts to unify things as inherently oppressive. For example, language is viewed as an oppressive because it is an attempt to constrain or influence the mind of the individual. Relativism is considered a cornerstone of postmodern academic thought. That's relativism. And there's the notes. Nihilism is also associated with political philosophy of anarchism. Well, there's a reason why, because of the extreme nature of the philosophy. However, this association isn't necessarily valid. That's what they'll say, but it ain't usually true. Most anarchists do believe in nihilism. They just don't tell you that. But that's a whole nother topic itself. But this is from the simplica simplicable.com. That's what they, I don't agree some of the thing they say, but this right here, that's what they'll use. Okay. Just because you would like to dismantle existing system doesn't mean you feel life is no meaning. Say they go about its moralist aspect. But nihilism could be it's pros and cons to the ideology. It's good. It's only I'll say be selective with it. But like I said, there's 7 things. Real concepts, individualism, modernism, devil's advocate, they will say that's 1, 2, 3. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6 and there's 7. There's related concepts. There's last man, anami, and shared experience. That's what they have. Individualism. That's 6 things on the board, but it's supposed to be 7 to beliefs. And then the philosophy, agency, alienation, altruism, Angus, anami, of course, archetypes, be yourself. It has all these things: free will, human spirit, individualism. All this stuff, postmodernism, etc., etc., way of life, all this stuff, real world, rationalism, reality, randomness, perfect imperfections, materialism, and all this other stuff, falsibility, casualty, philosophies that you different heard. And this is pretty good. There's a lot of examples of nihilism, but we just talked about it, but it's pretty much, that's all I got. But yeah, this is basically the ideology that you want to see. But this is my final part of it. And I hope y'all enjoy it. I just break down certain things. And even my last 2 nihilistic, I'll say, philosophy concepts of revisiting the ideology, because a lot of people try to say there's pros and cons to it. It ain't the best philosophy to go by, but it's understandable, but it's optional. It's very optional in this circumstance in this realistic world that we're in. Of course, in the Edomite kingdom, but of course, you got to be very realistic how the world works in this day and time, especially this reset of the 2020s era. I should I say, because everybody's changed. They've done got super modern now. So with that, until next time, shalom to the people of Israel, and of course to the Gentiles, shalom to you, the guests of our So-called future kingdom real soon. Shalom to y'all too. Until next time, I'll see y'all soon, and I'll be back sometime in July, but be on the lookout. So with that, until next time, and I'm out.